My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. I want my father back, you son of a bitch.
You ever wanted to avenge your father's death while pulling off the style of a Reaper for Justice with an irresistible Spanish accent? Or you're looking for a glass cannon melee build that dishes out incredible amounts of consistent damage with burst windows that melt even the strongest foes like dragons and giants in a heartbeat? Stick with me, cause this Elemental Fury Duelist build is for you. So starting off with the necessary mods to pull off the build, first you need Ordinator, Perks of Skyrim. Ordinator, Perks of Skyrim is a mod that overhauls the perk system, so every time you level up you get a perk point and you can invest that into skills and develop your character. It adds a lot of depth to the character build system and to the character progression, so I recommend you install it anyways. And then Classic Classes and Birthsigns Reimagined lets you choose a class at the beginning of the game, which is pretty cool to encourage unique playstyles, and so a mage is different from rogue and the warrior is different from the duelist and stuff. So these were the ones that you need necessarily to pull off the build, and optionally but recommended, I have some mods for you that just enhance the experience. If you play like a duelist, you want to make it feel like one and you want to look like one as well, so the Rapier moveset for MCO really gives you that feel. CL's Rapier is probably the coolest weapon out there, and the Inquisitor Armor really ties it all together. Make sure you install all the proper requirements, make sure you read your mod pages, and then you should be good to go. With that being said, let's look at the build itself. For the build we made a custom class in Birthsigns Reimagined, so we started off picking Conditioned, stamina increased by 20 points, after that the Duelist perk, dealing 20% more damage with one-handed weapons while your left hand is free, which is actually the enabler and the perk that we are taking advantage of for this build. And for Birthsign we chose the Warrior's Prowess, dealing 10% more damage with all melee weapons. So with that powerful core we're gonna jump into the perks. I will just cover the most important ones for the build. So One-Handed Mastery, each normal attack with one-handed weapon increases your overall damage and you can stack that up. Same as Cross Cut, where unblocked regular attacks with the sword increase the damage of your power attacks against the target. Next up we have Windswept, where every fourth power attack with the sword pushes the target back and deals incredible amounts of extra damage. And then we have Into the Dust, which lets our power attacks stack up above, that stacks 3 times for 15% extra damage each, which equals 45% extra damage for all our attacks when we've got it stacked up. Furious Strength increases the damage of our power attacks and also lets us scale with stamina. This is the reason why we chose the stamina perk in Classic Classes and Birthsigns Reimagined earlier. This is also the reason for this build being such a glass cannon. Every time we level up we don't invest in health but in stamina, because it's 1% damage for our power attacks every time we level up. Next up we have Rogue's Parry, which is actually another payoff for our duelist build, because when we're wielding a one-handed weapon and the other hand is empty, we can attack our foes in the moment they actually wind up an attack, or draw a bow, and that way we deal 40% extra damage and crit them, if our timing is right. As we actually are a shout burst build, we want the Windborne perk from the speech tree, which increases our attack damage by 30% and our movement speed by 15% when we shout, and the Force Redouble perk, which has a chance to reset the cooldown for our shouts. Now let's talk about the Elemental Fury. This is the essential burst cooldown for this build. When we have it maxed out and we shout, we gain 100% attack speed for 15 seconds. We want to keep it on cooldown at all times and start every fight by using this ability. Keep in mind that this works like an enchantment on the weapon, so you can't have your weapon pre-enchanted and use it alongside Elemental Fury. Sure, you might say this is all useful information, but what are we actually doing now with this build? In an optimal scenario, the priority would be to keep up Elemental Fury at all costs. You want to start our attacks by 6 unblocked light attacks and follow it up by 4 power attacks, looking something like this. For items you want to choose everything that boosts one-handed damage, attack speed, or reduces the shout cooldown. Lastly, if you feel fancy you can top that off with the Spellscribe perk that lets you imprint spells that get triggered by power attacks. So if you want to work around the fact that you can't add any extra enchantments to your weapons, this is a decent way to add frost, fire or lightning effects to your power attacks, and you can increase this damage even further, as the spell that is triggered profits from skill and perks in the destruction tree. The overall gameplay is actually more strategic than you might think. You're an absolute glass cannon, so you can take a lot of damage. It's really more about knowing when these burst windows are open, so you can really throw everything at them that you have. In the meantime, it's not really applicable to go for the full rotation, so it's better to throw a good mix of light attacks and power attacks at them, especially if you're in combat or surrounded by multiple enemies. But once you find those windows, it's extremely satisfying, especially on big dragons or like creatures with big health bars. If you can go ahead and diminish them and really really melt those health bars down in a couple of seconds. It's really fun. By the way, I don't claim that this is the perfect way to build it or the right way to build it. It's just what I'm using, what I find fun, and what I wanted to share with you guys. That's all I got for today. Thanks for watching. If you want to support me, the best thing you can do is drop a subscription on the channel. Thanks.